Well, hello and good evening for many of us. I know some people are viewing this. It's 9 o'clock for them right now. I'm going to give you an early applause because I'm very impressed that people at 9 o'clock, if you've had a long, busy day, are tuning in to see this webinar and learn and grow as a teacher. So I'm very impressed with your hard work. 9 p.m. in Mexico City. Whew. Okay, well then I have a job for me. I have to be as entertaining as engaging for those people who are having a very late night right now. Well, I'd like to begin. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Brett Siders and I'm an ELT education consultant. I've been working in the ELT field for a long time and I've been able to work with different cultures around the world, teaching them English, and of course, because of the current world situation, I'm exploring online teaching as well now. Today, I want to look at an important theory called content and language integrated learning. Now, I've done this integrated science seminar before. It's going to be a little bit different. I want to kind of go into more focusing on the activities that are contained in the book. So we need to understand what content and language integrated learning is. For those of you who don't know me, I say this every time. I need to change this picture. It looks ridiculously young, I know. And I think I've put on in America, we're calling it the COVID-15, where you gain 15 pounds because we've all just been sitting inside eating a lot. Well, I've been working in children's education for 18 years. I've been training teachers in ESL and EFL for about the past 8 years now. My background has always been in education. I studied educational psychology and I'm working now in the learning sciences, which is exploring new ways of learning in informal learning environments like online learning. So this is perfect for me. Today's agenda, what we're going to look at is, as I mentioned earlier, Clil, or that's Content and Language Integrated Learning, which is probably a theory, as fancy as that term sounds, probably a theory you've encountered before. But I want to look at it and see why it's so important and how the book that we're looking at today, Integrated Science, uses Clil. Also, we'll be looking at task-based learning. And specifically some activities that we can do when we encounter kind of different projects or experiments or activities that we can use to learn a language. And pardon me if I pause occasionally. I'm always going back and checking the chats to make sure I'm hearing everybody. Okay, wonderful. And then lastly, we're going to be looking at using the interactive science series and how the first 3 books utilize activities, and then next week we'll be looking at the Plus series, which is for older kids and goes far more in depth into the scientific principles. So what is Clil? I'm sure if you're like me as a teacher, especially an English language teacher, we constantly hear these new teaching theories and teaching strategies coming out all the time. Clil, I feel, is actually one of those really, really important ones. Clil, Content and Language Integrated Learning. Fundamentally, Clil is a form of language immersion. So in most of our classes, we're focusing on learning the language, learning the skills, focusing on grammar, focusing on vocabulary, but we're not maybe using it in an authentic manner. So what Clil does is using English more naturally. What it's trying to do is teach a subject using the English language. I want to take a moment, and for those of you who have maybe heard of Clil before, or were here with my last seminar where I discussed it, why do you think it's encouraged to use? Why should we use content and language integrated learning? Why should we learn about science in our English class, or maybe about history in our English class. Why would we do that? What are your thoughts? Please share in the chat. What are some of your thoughts? Oh, very good. Someone was saying to recognize vocabulary. Any other ideas? Why might we use Clil? Why might we want to teach a different subject in our English classes? I think the first one, someone had got it really nicely. It improves the second language. Of course, right? We know if we're learning science in our English class, we're learning lots of these scientific terms in English. But what research has also shown is that actually the first language develops more fully too. So you're kind of working on both languages at the same time. You're improving your second language, let's say it's English, and maybe at the same time you're improving your first language, let's say it's Spanish. So it's actually, this is why Clil has become very prominent, is because they're realizing there's mutual benefits in it. And yeah, and people said like translation skills. That's absolutely right. If anybody has worked as a translator, you know that it's a dual way with translation. Not only are you improving your English, your second language, but you're improving your first language too by working with translation. Yeah, someone says it's integrating knowledge. That's why that's such a key word for it, integrated. I like how Rocco said it. He said, ooh, it kind of went away, please. English is just the media to learn. We need to learn how to use it in a natural way. And that's exactly what Clil tries to do. It, as we mentioned, often promotes new vocabulary. And it builds target language. You know, often in many of our second language English books, they try to pick up either high frequency words or commonly used words in the English language. But what Clil does is it focuses on specified language. If you want to learn more about science, then you're going to learn more of those scientific terms. History, you'll learn more of those history terms. And also, as I've mentioned before, it requires students to use the target language more naturally. And many of you might be thinking, we already do this. Content and language integrated learning is not really new. Universities have been doing it for a long time, right? Whether it's been Spanish, it's been English, French in the past, or German. When you take those courses, you're also taking another subject matter. So universities have done this a long time. Second language students go to, if they come to America, they go to the university, they're taking all these courses in their second language. That's Clil. So what a lot of teacher educators had wanted to do was, let's start getting kids ready at a younger age to learn this material in their second language. So how can we keep kids engaged? Well, with these kinds of activities, it's always interaction through asking questions, especially with science. And in my mind, also, especially with English language. I don't want to just give them the answer. I want to ask questions and get them thinking and try to teach them how they can respond in English. Another big thing, of course, especially not only with the task-based learning, when we have different activities, but it's less teacher talk, and we try to get more student production. The reason I say this is, you know, I don't know how long your English classes are, generally maybe 45 minutes to an hour, or you might have a longer block. But in that time, I've just always had the philosophy, try to give the students as many speaking opportunities, because that might be the only time they get to use it. So try to maximize it. And then a lot of these science activities can be done at home. Some of the materials might be specialized and they need to prepare it ahead of time, but many of the materials you could get it the day of. All right. Well, I want to do actually something right now. I realized when I started this webinar, I got ahead of myself. So before I go into the interactive science books and we look at them and how to use them, I actually wanted to do something with you, the panelists. There's two things I wanted to say. One, some of you might have seen the chat text that I'd written about toothpicks and marshmallows. If some of you are rubbing your head going, what is he talking about? Well, what we'll be doing later is an activity using toothpicks and marshmallows. Maybe some of you have already done an activity like this. I know my son just did it in school the other day, but I would like to show it to you as well. So if you have it in your room or in your house, please go get toothpicks and marshmallows, as many as you have. And we're going to try to do the project together later. Now, if you don't have them, that's fine. As adults, I'm just going to encourage you to kind of visualize it and what we're doing. But if you do have toothpicks and marshmallows, it makes it so much better. So I'll go into that more deeply later on. But before I continue with the interactive science, I had a fun activity one of my students in my class had introduced me to. It was our first week back at school today, and he had wanted to play the game One Word. One Word. Has anybody heard the game One Word? It's maybe not a game, but, well, what it is I want you to think of this past week. Think of this past week and think of one word to describe this past week. So whatever happened, like today, it was our first week in Arizona going back to in-person teaching. So my one word is exhausted. I'm exhausted. Now, what I would like you to do is also share your one word. Now, you don't need to tell me why. As maybe the teacher, I can inquire and ask questions, or maybe it's just kind of fun to hear you use your one word and we have to think up reasons. So if you feel comfortable, please, right now in the chat, use one word to describe your week. Very good. I see challenging was the first one that came up. That's one word. I like you. Busy, good. Are they all going to be like this? Exhausting, challenging, busy. Ah, Oswaldo, motivating. Okay, yeah, exciting. I'm sure we could use maybe positive words or negative words. I agree with you. Rough. Oh, amazing. You see, I'm just frustrating. I'm with you there. Since beginning, we've had a lot of lack of communication with schools and parents and everybody, so it's very frustrating for all of us. I'm glad I heard some positive things too. I like that. Someone just said they're happy. I'm envious of you. I wish I could be happy right now too. I'm quite exhausted. But this is a word this is a little activity I like to do with my students to kind of dig deep into their vocabulary and their adjectives to kind of express themselves. And it's nice because you can either encourage them to explain themselves or just stick with the one word. So a fun activity I do with my kids. Ooh, I like Alejandro, working is a way to feel happy. I couldn't agree more. All right, well, I would like to now continue with our interactive science books. I mentioned previously that this week, for this webinar, we'll be looking at the interactive science book. And then in our webinar next week, we'll be looking at the interactive science plus book. To simply put it, you know, the interactive science is for lower primary students and the others for upper primary students. I would say a significant difference in the two is that with the interactive science book, there's more science activities specifically connected to different units. Whereas with the Interactive Science Plus, it gets far more into like the methodology and the scientific process. It's not overwhelming. It's still easy for a teacher who's not a science teacher to use. And I'd say that's the most important thing with Clil books. They are designed to be for English teachers, not science teachers or history teachers or math teachers. So these books are designed for you, English teachers. So with the book we'll be looking at, it's Interactive Science Book 2. It is for lower primary students, and it contains lesson plans. There's a teacher manual. I'll be looking at a student app, which kind of has extra activities, and it's just all you need is internet access. And then these have science activities. Now, something unique about this book, I mentioned the lesson plans earlier. With this book, each unit, which is actually 4 pages, but there's lots of information on each, you'll see in a minute. But each unit is actually built or designed to be 3 lessons. So that means that with 1 unit, you could get 3 different class periods out of it. And to highlight that here, what I've put here, I know it looks very confusing, lots of words, but each one of these is a lesson plan. And as you can see up there in the corner, it literally says day 1, day 2, day 3. That I was amazed at this. Like 1 unit could be divided into 3 lessons, but the publishers or designers of the book have made it this way. Now, the wonderful thing as an English teacher is you have freedom in your classroom. If you like that, if you need to take your book and you want to stretch it out, you want to really get deep into those units, I recommend it, because that's really what this, this design is about. It's not like you just cover a unit per day. You just cover it and move past it. You kind of get involved into it, recycle the vocabulary, look at it through different angles. So again, 1 unit can be divided into 3 lessons, but if you kind of want to go to shorter, you could just manipulate it however you wanted. But having said that, I would recommend, if you use this, to use the resources, right? Those lesson plans, someone took their time to time it out, to come up with all the activities. I mean, it's so in detail, and they're free. You know, if you're using the book, those lesson plans are free. And the reason I like their approach is there is a common criticism of teaching and learning. I will say it's a criticism we use in the United States, as you can see with that quote. Maybe, I don't know if people have seen this quote before, but it says, "A mile wide and an inch deep." Yeah, we have those American terms. So I maybe put it for the rest of the world. A kilometer wide and a centimeter deep. I think it has the same meaning. Doesn't sound as good, but it has the same meaning. What that means is if you look at the diagram here, that so often in our schools, we have tons of material, tons of content we're covering with the students. That's the mile wide part, right? We're covering all this different, you know, if it's English classes, we're covering grammar, we're covering all this vocab, we're covering all the different types of grammar, all the different speaking activities, so much material. But because there's so much material, we only get a little deep into it. We only have, our understanding of it only goes so deep. So it's kind of like someone who knows a lot of general ideas, but they don't have the details. They don't have a deeper understanding of it. And that's unfortunately what's happening with our English language classes. And that's how I've encountered students from all around the world who've been taking English classes for years, and they still can't speak or understand English. It seems insane, but it's not. It's just because so much content has been covered and they've never delved into it deeply. So I would like to go back and say, I recommend using those 3 lesson plans, because if you look, here's, for instance, book 2. There's over 20 units. That's a lot of material to go over. Lots of science activities and materials. You can get so much out of 1 book. And as you can see, of course, with each section, there's the 4 sections. All of them are the 4 science fields: life science, physical science, earth or space science, and then technology and society. Again, just to repeat myself, I think the 3 lesson plans really help you go in depth with each of these, because we are getting into scientific terms, which could be maybe a little bit more challenging. So going in deeper will ensure that there's deeper learning. Task-based learning. Oh, I am a big fan of task-based learning. Well, what is it? What is task-based learning? How about, I would like to hear your responses. What do you hear? What do you think when you hear of task-based learning? It doesn't matter what the right answer is. Everybody has kind of their own different view of what task-based learning is. So if you've heard of it, what do you think of it? What does it make you think of? Please feel free to put that in the chat. Okay, experiments. Great thing. Yeah, I see that a lot. Experiments, okay. In essence, task-based learning, it could be experiments, it could be all those. It could be projects, it could be anything. The options are pretty wide with task-based learning, but within ESL, what task-based learning is that the central focus of the lesson is to complete the task. You're trying to accomplish the task, whatever it is. You're doing the project, you're growing a plant, you're watching how water evaporates, whatever that is. That's the focus of the lesson, not grammar or vocabulary. I hear lots of people chatting, so I want to make sure. And I see it there too. People already are using the term experiential, right? Experiential learning, learning by doing. And they also say it's learning by doing and reflecting on it, reflecting on what you just did. But yes, I agree, it's learning through experiencing. But with language learning, we need to be careful, because again, the central focus in our language class isn't the language. It seems kind of tricky. What it is it's to complete the task. But how do they complete the task? By using the language. It's much more integrated, much more cooperative, and it requires them to use the language to get what they want. I think of a simple example of this, a very simple example, is when I lived in Asia and I was raising my son and teaching him English. He only learned his English from me. How I used task-based learning was almost through a behavioral viewpoint. Like if my son wanted milk, he could easily say to me in his first language, which was Korean, or he could have pointed to the refrigerator or do many things, but he needed my help to get the milk. And some of you might go, ooh, Brett's a little mean. But what I would do is, even if I knew what he wanted, I wouldn't give it to him. Not until he used the correct English or grammar to ask for it. So when he was a very little kid, he'd say, milk, please. And then he would get it. That's an example of task-based learning, that you accomplish a task by using the language. So it's very effective. You'll see in the different activities we have and the ones I'm showing you that in order for the students to complete the task successfully, they have to use the language effectively. I've shown in past webinars the idea of gap fill activities, or another term is called jigsaw activities. That's pure task-based learning. That in order for the students to complete the task, they have to work together or communicate together. Very great for English classrooms. So with task-based learning, there's really kind of 4 stages. And I want to look at the interactive science book and see how they, how you can use the 4 stages of task-based learning to accomplish it. So first is a pre-task. So this is where, let's say we're getting into our science activity right now. We've covered the material in the book. Okay. We've covered the material in the book. They've been introduced to the vocab. They've done comprehension checks. They've done all the writing. The book work is complete. They've seen it. Well, now you want to review it. So you go into the Pretask, and let me get this here. So for instance, in book 2, there's unit 16, which is in the technology and society section, slide and glide. So obviously, if you're kind of looking at this, this scientific question is talking about forces, right? Push and pull and what it does. So we have our story, we have thinking, we have, as you can see, lots of WH questions. Within science, we want those WH questions. What, when, where, why? Whatever we can do using the language we have. Granted, again, this book is for lower primary students, so we have to be very careful with the kind of questions we ask to make sure they can understand them. So, and then here we do our comprehension check. So literally what you've just seen there is unit 16. We have our reading section, our questions, our keywords, and our checking for understanding vocabulary. So if you recall, when I said this could be divided into 3 lessons, that's what I think is amazing about this book and the publishers or distributors, that someone went through all of this and designed 3 lessons for each of these units. That's a lot of work that now saves me time when I use this book. I can just use their lesson plans and adapt it how I want to. But the Pretask is all about kind of getting them thinking, engaging them, getting them thinking about what they had learned, right? Because maybe they had learned this a few lessons ago. Then we do task preparation. This is where the teacher provides clear directions and provides the necessary materials. Now, this is an important part because these are ESL opportunities. So in going over the materials, you can ask your questions, what materials do we need? And I always encourage full sentence. I need 3 books of the same thickness. I need a bigger book. I need a metal ball. I often use then, hey, in online, when I work with students, then I use do you have a metal ball? Yes, I do. No, I don't. These are great speaking opportunities. Don't just go, okay, materials, check, 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 done, and move on. Get them engaged in this, asking questions and giving answers in full sentences. Now, the next part is especially what I usually focus on when I do a task-based learning activity. It's the during task. This is where the teacher monitors and provides support. And remember, the learners focus on communication more than accuracy. It's just as if they're working together, can they understand each other? Can they understand the teacher? That's the most important part, the communication. So the next part, as what I do a lot, is with the procedures or the steps or instructions. I feel this is the part that presents the most amount of ESL opportunities. And there's some different activities I would like to do to show you that. This is truly where not only do you get speaking and listening opportunities, but you get great comprehension checks. And let me show you what I mean. Pardon me, I do want to say with stage 4 is of course the post task, where this is where during the task, when you are walking around and monitoring the students, or if you're online and monitoring them, you see the common words they're having problems with, the common issues, and you discuss that. But this part, the during task activities, is very crucial, and it's just so much meat that you can work with. So one of my favorite during task activities that was often not just a reading comprehension, but it was just a comprehension in general. So one thing that I love is, when the procedures have pictures with them. And usually with the lower primary students, they'll usually do that, right? They have a description of it and then a picture of it, whatever that step or procedure is. So one activity I do a lot with my kids, in class, I would cut them out. Like I'd cut out the word, the text, and I'd cut out the picture, and then just do a matching activity, right? Now, often this might be their first introduction to the directions. I wouldn't have covered it before, because what I want them to do is show me that they understand not only, of course, what the picture means, but what the direction is. So I kind of gave the answer already there if you saw my click, but look at these 3 directions. Please read them quietly to yourself and then see which of the directions is shown in the picture. I'm sure you all know, but how about you just tell me in the chat too? Which direction fits the picture? Two, of course, everyone's like two. Yes, just to make sure I was clear on it. So what this activity is if I go back, I'm gonna go back real quick so I can show you. If you see our directions here in our science activity, we have the picture and we have the text. Now the great thing, instead of just introducing them and having them read this, is click forward, is introduce all the steps to them. Maybe they don't even know what it is. They don't know what it's connected to, but then also show them all the pictures and have them connect it. Because if the student says, oh, okay, this picture is put plastic wrap tightly over 1 cup using an elastic band. If they're able to match that, immediately for me as a teacher, I say they're comprehending it. They understand it. They know what that direction means and they know what it looks like, which is an important step for the next part, which is they need to do it. So this activity I think is very important, and trust me, it's great for kids because what they start doing is looking at the context of the sentence, right? They might look at, maybe some of you saw the elastic band and knew that's how that had to be the elastic band, or plastic wrap. Maybe that was the key word. But the students really have to read the text carefully to understand what the picture is. And that's why I say, you know, if you have activities or instructions that have pictures with it, that's the best. That's the best. Another activity, I'm sure if you've seen one of my webinars before, you've heard me talk about TPR, total physical response. But a great activity for this is to create actions. So imagine we have our science experiment and we have our directions. Here's 3 directions from a science experiment about growing a seed. You're going to grow a plant. This is one of the science experiments we looked at back in July. So you're going to grow a plant. Well, now before you want the students to do the activities, you have to be sure that they understand the directions. That's essential for the task-based activities. So one fun thing I do to kind of get the kids up and moving, or at least online, they can move and be silly, is I show them the directions. So for instance, number 1, fold the paper towel and place it around the inside of the cup. Number 2, make the second paper towel into a ball and place it inside the cup to fill the space. Number 3, place the bean seed about 3 centimeters from the top of the cup between the paper towel lining and the cups inside. All right, now maybe a lot of kids, they have no idea what that means. If you include the picture, that can help them too. But what you want to do is, as they've read it more, can they create a gesture a gesture to show it? Can they show what it means? So for number 1, fold the paper towel and place it around the inside of the cup. Now, I can't see any of you, unfortunately. So what we're going to do now, because I can't see any of you, is I would like to ask for 3 volunteers. I need 3 volunteers for this. It'll be a moment until we do the activity, but if you would like to volunteer, please let Language World in the chat know. So again, if you would like to volunteer, I would appreciate that. Please put your name in the chat if you would like to volunteer for an interactive activity that we will do. What we want to do is, with the actions for each step, focus on the verb. Focus on that verb phrase. So for instance, fold a paper towel. Number 2, make the second ball. That's not as much, not as easy. Or number 3, place the bean. That's very important, I think, when we teach kids to show them the action and verb phrases. Okay, I'm going to, all right. Now, wonderful. Now, if those 3 volunteers, Rosa, Rocio, and Maria, if you turn your cameras on. So, now, most important with this, I see Rocio already using a prop material, and I think that's a great idea. But one thing with the kids is, I just want it to be actions, just to be actions. Now, what I'm going to do, pardon me, this is a little challenging doing it the first time online. But what we need to do now is once you've decided on the actions for each one, you secretly give each student a step to act out. So what I'm going to do to be secret, usually I just go up to the student and whisper it in their ear. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a little chat. So I'll tell you if you're step 1 or step 2 or step 3. Okay? Excellent. All right. Because what's going to happen, let me go back, pardon me. So I'm going to keep that up as I let my students, quote unquote students, teachers, know what they are. So so I'm sending it to you. Please check your chats. I'll send a private chat to you. Okay, and then and pardon me, last one. Okay, so I've secretly sent out the step that each teacher will do. So what we do then, this is all the clicking I have to do here, is then, granted, this is when I do it in class, I have the students line up in the wrong order. But what we'll do instead, because it's a webinar, is I will just randomly call the teachers, not the teachers in the correct order, not the steps in the correct order, randomly. And then what we'll have to do is, I usually like to act it out once or twice, because sometimes the students need to see it several times. But then what the students will do, or the rest of the participants in this webinar, is tell me which teacher goes in the right order. So this is a little bit more challenging since we've not really met each other and we don't know all our names already. It's important that we all know the names when we do this in class, but we're going to try it anyways. Because, and I'm going to give you a little visual, what we're hoping is that once you do the actions are put in the correct order, which shows us 2 things. That the students not only know what the gesture means, oh, that means to put the paper in the cup, but they also know which step goes where. This is all to prepare them for when they actually do the task. So let's do that. Okay, I'm gonna have everybody, if everybody could look at, well, I'll ask for volunteers instead. Who would like to go first? Who feels comfortable going first? Well, then I will say, actually, Rosa, sure. And this is also important. The teachers have asked me if I could show them the steps one last time. So I'll keep that up there. So Rosa, could you please just show us your step? Okay, so everyone, our attention needs to be on Rosa. Ooh, pardon me. So Rosa, are you good? Do you know? Can you show the step? Hey, Rosa, let me see. 1 second. I want to check real quick. Pardon me. 1 second. Oh, okay. Rosa's saying she's having problems on her end. So what we'll do instead, that's okay, Rosa. Can you still just show the action? We don't even need to hear you. Can you just show the action? Okay. It seems to me for everybody else who's watching, we're having some tech difficulties. So what I'll do is I'll show the step that was supposed to be Rosa. So everyone, please watch carefully. In your head, think, which step is it? Is it step number 1, step number 2, or step number 3? Now, as I mentioned before, I recommend many times the students might see it and go, what? And need to see it again. So again. Okay. Wait. And we don't need to show. If you think you know the answer, that's fine. Now, I'm going to call on Claudia. Claudia, can you show us your step, please? So you saw my step. Now it's Claudia's turn. Okay, Claudia, when you're ready, make sure we can see it in the camera. Okay. Now, as I'm experiencing, there's challenges with this, just like in a classroom. We have to make sure, Claudia, if you could move just back a little bit so we can see your hands a little bit more. There you go. Better. Okay. You can go slower. I see this movement. Okay. All right. All right. So everybody guess, is that step 1, 2, or 3? Keep that in your head. We'll go over it at the end. All right. And last one, Rocio. Can you show us your step, please? Very good, and that was very clear. Now, we did see she used props, and if you want to use props, that's fine. Usually in class, I don't have props, so I just have the kids act it out, but whatever you feel helps in your class the best. So now, we saw those 3 out of order. Which is the correct order? Someone put it already. So we saw Rosa, or my step was, which one was me? Which step was I? Brett. Very good. I saw people that I was number 3. Then Claudia went. And Claudia, what number was Claudia? She had done this. She was number 1. She folded the paper and then placed it around. I kept on seeing that's what she was doing here, placing it around. And then the last one, obviously Rocio. We saw her make that ball, right? She scrunched it up. She put it in the cup. She used props. You could or could not use it, whatever you want. Now, obviously we saw that online, there are more challenges involved here, right? We need to make sure the kids are doing it in front of the camera. If I noticed when Claudia did it, her hands might have gone too fast, so it's a slower camera. So there are definitely some tech issues that we want to work with on this, but even though while this works really well in person, even online, it's a great comprehension check. They're showing that can they take the text and connect it with the action, which is really what we want. Thank you so much for your volunteering. I'm sorry we had some tech issues there. I'm giving you a round of applause. If we were in person, I'd be giving you a chocolate. That's what I would always do. But thank you so much. And I will continue to move on. And our next activity will actually be doing all participants. Thank you so much. You still might be able to see me, but thank you very much, Language World. Thank you, Rosa, Claudia, and Rocio. Okay. So that's just one activity. And I need to move through this since we need to see it. But going off of an activity here, I clicked a little bit much. Okay. Here's an activity. This is the activity we're looking at with those instructions, right? This is about growing a plant. Growing a plant. In the story, we read about plants, and then we're focusing on how to grow it. Again, I feel for me in my classes that the best content areas and speaking opportunities came from using those instructions and showing deeper meaning. We looked at this in the last webinar, but again, it's instead of using actions, just have the kids put the directions in the correct order. So, we know it, fold the paper towel and place it around inside the cup. What do we do next? What's our next step, everybody? First one was, remember, to fold the paper and place it around inside the cup. What was the second step? To make the second paper towel into a ball and place it inside the cup to fill the space. As you can see, many times I'll do 2 different activities with the same sets of instructions, because one of the most important parts of the task-based activities is that they know how to do the steps without being told. So we go 3, 4, 5, 6, very easy activity, but again, it's showing that they understand the reading and know how to put it in order for when they do the task. I would say the best form of this, in my mind, is you can either do a task-based activity between you and the students, like for instance, I'm going to be saying the directions and you'll be following along, or I've also done this student to student. But of course, online, I'd probably say it's better for teacher to student. Now, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, it's this. I'm sure you've all saw those directions. Your student could turn to the activity, see the directions, and just copy it and do it. But what I like to do is I turn those directions into a task-based activity, and this is actually the one I use the most often. I feel this is the best one. Earlier, I had asked you to get some toothpicks or marshmallows. If you have the toothpicks or marshmallows, you can set them out in front of you now. If you don't, what I would say is just try to visualize it. Visualize that during this presentation, what I'm going to do is with each step, I'm going to give you a direction. Now, if you have the marshmallows and toothpicks, just follow those directions. But if you don't and you're visualizing it, just imagine doing it inside your head. Because what we'll do is we're going to check. Did what you hear and what you did, was it the same? Because that's a great listening comprehension check. So let's get this going. This is building a stick house. This is an activity I have seen. It's usually considered a STEM activity. I've seen it connected many times to the 3 Little Pigs, but you're building a house. You're building a stick house. Now here's what we're gonna do. Okay, I have to, pardon me. Okay, so what you're gonna do is listen carefully to each step to make the project. Now, if you have the materials again, build it up. If not, visualize it inside your head and then look at my picture and see, ooh, is it the same or is it different? Okay. Step 1. I hope you are ready. Step 1. Place 4 toothpicks in a square shape. So again, if you have your toothpicks in front of you, please follow those directions. Place 4 toothpicks in a square shape. If you don't have them in your head, picture what that would look like. Now, generally what I do is remember, during the task, I'm walking around and monitoring the students, or if it's online, I have them either put the camera on their project so I can see it, or have them occasionally show it to me with their camera. But you do need to be checking, because in the end, what you want them to do is go, all right, is this what you got? So when I said place 4 toothpicks in a square shape, do you have something similar to this? This is where you see if it's yes, they understand, or no, they don't. All right, let's move to number 2. Step 2. Join each corner with the marshmallow, or sometimes they use styrofoam balls. This project actually says styrofoam balls, but I say marshmallow. So again, join each corner with the marshmallow. For the sake of time, I'm going to move a little bit more quickly. So you can see, is this what you saw? Were you seeing the corners being connected? Did you understand that? If I'm doing this with my students and they're just sitting there with the materials, that means, oh, it tells me maybe they don't know what join means. They don't know what that means. Connect, put together. You try different terms. Okay. Step 3, put a toothpick upright. Put a toothpick upright. Now, during this, what I do is, with science, you don't want to give the answer immediately. Immediately, you might think, oh, they don't know what upright means. What is upright? I've never heard that before. But just have them think. I'm like, you're building a house. You have those 4 on the bottom you've connected. Put it up, upright. And just have them guess. Can they guess from the word upright, what does that mean? If they don't, that lets you know the vocabulary that you can review with them. And then they can still check it to say, oh, okay, put a toothpick upright, I see. And on this, I've seen most kids get it. They understand it. Okay, pardon me. We do have 8 steps, so I'm going to move a little bit more quickly. 4, put a ball on each toothpick. Put a marshmallow on each toothpick. So you've put them upright. Now you need to put a marshmallow on each of the toothpicks. Again, I just say, I don't want to show them the picture yet. If I show them the picture now, they'll just copy the picture. We don't want that. We want them to have to listen and understand and then do. And which is good. If they don't understand what they're listening to, then you'll know that when you look at their project. Okay, so is this what you got? Put a marshmallow or a styrofoam ball on each end. Excellent. Step 5, put a toothpick sideways. Put a toothpick sideways. Now, maybe some of you, if you can think about how your students think, maybe they don't know what sideways means. But if they understand that they're building a house, and they've put up the 4, and now it's sideways, oh, I see, because we're connecting the house. So there is a lot of problem solving going into this. And I love it. Someone just said it too. We have to encourage the kids to be creative their own way. Absolutely. When I see them do this, I'm not waiting to go, no, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. No, what are you coming up with? What are you creating? If it works to help making the house, I encourage that. I would say the one thing though in this activity is you are listening, or you are checking to see that they understand the vocabulary, right? Put it upright, put it sideways, join together. So there are some vocab checks there too. But to go off of what Maria had said about letting the students be creative, I've seen teachers do this activity and they don't say anything about toothpicks or marshmallows. They tell the kids, hey, we're gonna build a house kind of like this. What materials do you think we could use? And you let the kids brainstorm. Sometimes the ideas will work, sometimes they won't, but you can do it that way. These books, usually the materials are all decided, the procedures are all decided, but if you want, you can be flexible where you can be. So, pardon me, I'm coming close to the end here, so I need to move on. So perhaps this is what your step 5 look like. But you can see this process. I do the same thing. I give them the verbal direction, see if they can understand it, and then show the picture to help them connect it. And then by the end, in this case, I'm be surprised if no one has done this before. These are the famous kind of engineering STEAM activities. That's, how to build a house. And it was very fun. Like when my son did this at his school, they did it with Little Red Riding Hood, pardon me, not Little Red Riding Hood, 3 Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf. And they used like a hair dryer to try to blow it. Like, oh, that was simulating the wolf blowing the house, and could the house stand up or not? So there's a lot of fun ways to connect these STEM activities to the readings, which is what the interactive science books does. So as we're coming to a close here, I think the one thing I want to reiterate is that with the interactive science book is that you can get so much out of it. There's 4 pages, but in those 4 pages, there's a wealth of information. I really recommend using the lesson plans. I sat one time, like, think about it. Each book has 20 units, 3 lessons per unit, 3 full lessons. I can't imagine how much time it took some educator to design all of those lessons for those books. 3 lessons in each unit, 20 units. So I just say that's a great resource to use. Why not use it at all? So I also recommend using those lessons because they really try to, instead of going a mile wide and an inch deep, they try to dig deeper into the language and the content for each unit. So I really do love those. I want to share one last thing before we go. One thing in connection with the book and those materials is also the online app. This is the online app here. We looked at it a little bit back in July, but as you can see here, this is book 2. This is book 2. And then you see each of our sections, right? There's the orange section, which is earth science, pardon me, life science, and then the red, which is earth science, blue, which is earth and space, and then red is technology. I'm mixing them all up now. But in each of these you can click on. So here's the one we were looking at, slide and glide. We looked at that earlier with the friction. So when you get into it, as you can see, immediately we're introduced with questions. That's what these science books are so focused on, is asking questions to the kids, using the language. Yes, someone asked me to repeat the link. Do you mean the link for these apps? We will have that included and then at the end as well. And I'll ask Language World to be able to put that for you there. But great question. And I just want to quickly go through it. As you can see, there's some of the text is reintroduced here, but then we do have different speaking activities and different games. The reason I show this, again, I know this probably sounds bad. I've said it to you many times. In class, I never really use these resources. Like I just kind of used the book and that was it. I know I needed to expand myself. But now that I'm online teaching, I find these absolutely necessary. Like these are so good to kind of fill in the time. You need a gap filler. Maybe the kids are kind of bored with some things and you need a new activity. That's where I really like this app here. I believe, yes, Language World has talked about where you can go to get this app. And again, that's all the books. That's all the interactive science books, book 1, 2, 3, and then the interactive science books plus, which there's also 3 for that as well. So again, a great supplementary activity to your lesson. And in my mind, perfect for online learning. Perfect for online learning. Pardon me here. Moving back now, I apologize, out of order a little bit. So going off, again, with these interactive science books, the big difference was with using those science activities. So again, I encourage you to kind of expand on those, learn more about task-based activities. Don't just look at that one science activity as just a quick lesson that you can do. We looked at how those procedures, you can get such deeper understanding out of the steps and the language used to understand that science material. Before I go, I do want to share, some people have already been asking about, the links where we can go see these, this information. This is the Language World Books website. So for books that have ebooks, you can find them there, and then all the free downloadable resources. So I was going to show you where I downloaded the lesson plans, but it's just almost way too long to see, right? The 3 lesson plans per unit, but that's all right here where you can get that wonderful, wonderful information. Also, I know we have people maybe also from who are in Asia right now, which is early in the morning for you, I'm sure. Just to let you know that next week on, for if you're in the West, if you're in the Americas, North, Central, or South, we'll be meeting about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, but we're looking at the new ways of learning science with the Interactive Science Plus. And this is going to be a little bit different because these won't be focused on activities, but actually how we can teach scientific method using English. Now, if I say that term, scientific method, and you kind of get a little worried or hesitant, like, ooh, I'm not a scientist, don't worry. Remember, that's how these books are designed. They're designed for English teachers, not science teachers. So I hope if you enjoyed this webinar, if you would like to learn more, especially about using higher level science in your English classroom, I recommend you join us for that. It'd be wonderful to see you there. And lastly, I recommend subscribing to the YouTube or Facebook for Language World. All our past webinars are located on there. So if you want to revisit or see any of them, I highly recommend that. And then of course on Facebook, we have all that information updated, the different webinars and the times of those webinars. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I know I went a little bit over our time and I do apologize for that. But I would like to take a couple of minutes. If you need to go, I understand some of you, it's 10 o'clock right now and you want to get to bed or just go enjoy the rest of your evening. I totally understand. If you have any questions for me, please stay with me and I will be here for about the next 5 minutes asking any questions you may have. So again, thank you so much for joining, everybody. I know some of you, I can't believe you were watching a webinar at 9 o'clock at night. I'm so impressed with your work ethic and your motivation to improve yourself. So I'm seeing the comments. Thank you so much, you guys. You've been very wonderful. Thank you for participating. I just have to find a way to get chocolates to you because I find chocolates are the best motivator for participation. I don't do that with my students, just with the adult teachers I work with. Yes, and Rosa, I owe you a chocolate too, of course. So thank you so much, everybody. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and find ways to stay happy. Thank you so much. If you need to go on. I'm going to be on for about another minute. I'll just be silent here if anybody has questions. If not, take care, and I hope to see you next time.